The massive colony ship UESS Frontier drifted through the darkness of space, its engines humming quietly as it approached the Alpha Centauri system. Inside the bridge, Commander Alice Nelson watched the stars through the main view screen, her fingers tapping nervously on the armrest of her chair. "How much longer until we reach the outer boundary?" she asked. Navigator Eric Weber checked his instruments. "About 3 hours, Commander. All systems normal." Alice nodded and stood up, stretching her back. The Frontier carried 10,000 colonists in cryosleep, Earth's first attempt to establish a permanent settlement beyond the solar system. After traveling for nearly 7 years, they were finally approaching their destination. "Send word to wake the command staff," Alice ordered. "I want everyone alert when we enter the system." As Eric relayed the orders, a warning light flashed on the sensor panel. Communications Officer Diane Miller frowned and adjusted her controls. "Commander, I'm picking up unusual energy readings ahead," she said. "Definitely artificial, but not matching any known human patterns." Alice froze. "Show me." The main screen shifted to display a cluster of massive objects moving in formation at the edge of the star system. There were dozens of them, each larger than the Frontier. "Those are ships," Alice whispered. "We're not alone out here." The bridge fell silent as the reality sank in. Humanity had just made first contact. "Send standard greeting protocols," Alice ordered, her voice steady despite her racing heart. "All frequencies, all formats." Diane nodded and began transmitting. "Broadcasting now. Simple mathematical sequences, basic language primers, and visual data packages." Minutes passed with no response. The alien fleet maintained its position, seemingly observing the human vessel. "They must be studying us," Alice said. "Keep broadcasting." Suddenly the ship shuddered. A beam of pale blue light had locked onto the Frontier. Before anyone could react, several smaller vessels detached from the alien formation and accelerated toward them. "Shields up. Battle stations," Alice shouted, but it was too late. The alien ships surrounded the Frontier, not firing weapons but scanning every inch of the human vessel. Then, without warning, portions of the hull began to shimmer and disappear as crew members vanished in flashes of light. "They're taking people," Eric shouted. Alice grabbed the communication system. "This is Commander Alice Nelson of Earth. We come in peace. Please respond." On the alien flagship, a tall, slender creature with iridescent skin observed the human vessel through a viewing portal. The being had no visible mouth, just large, faceted eyes that shimmered with internal light. It turned to another of its kind and communicated without sound. Curious specimens, the thought flowed from senior researcher Vrax to her assistant. They emit organized sound patterns, possible mating calls or territorial displays. Her assistant's thoughts rippled back. The brain scans show complex neural structure but no sign of the mind path. Definitely non-sentient, though remarkably advanced for animals. "Collect a range of specimens," Vrax decided. "This discovery will fascinate the Galactic Concord. Physically advanced non-sentients are extremely rare." Back on the Frontier, Dr. Peter Grant, the ship's chief linguist, found himself surrounded by blinding light. When his vision cleared, he stood in a large, transparent enclosure filled with plants and small pools of water. Beyond the walls, he could see other habitats containing various creatures, some humanoid, others completely alien. "Hello?" Peter called out, his voice echoing in the chamber. "Can anyone hear me?" There was no response. Looking around, he spotted several other humans from the Frontier in nearby enclosures. They appeared confused and frightened, calling out as he had done. A tall, slender alien approached his habitat, studying him with large, faceted eyes. The creature carried no visible technology but seemed to be recording observations somehow. "We are intelligent beings," Peter said clearly, pointing to himself. "We have language, technology, art. We built spacecraft. Please understand." The alien showed no reaction to his words. Instead, it adjusted something outside the enclosure, causing a panel to open. A tray of unknown substances appeared. "Food?" Peter assumed. The alien watched him expectantly. "You think I'm an animal," Peter realized aloud. "You put me in a zoo." Over the next several hours, Peter observed the aliens closely. They never spoke aloud, yet they clearly communicated with each other. When three aliens stood together near his enclosure, he noticed subtle changes in the light patterns within their eyes. They were communicating silently, perhaps telepathically. In a nearby habitat, he saw a creature with 4 limbs and rough, bark-like skin, making clicking sounds. The aliens paid no attention to these noises, just as they ignored human speech. They don't understand sound as communication, Peter whispered to himself. They evolved differently. Meanwhile, Commander Alice struggled to maintain control of the frontier. Nearly 100 crew members had vanished, and parts of the ship were being systematically dismantled by alien technology. They're treating us like specimens, she told the remaining bridge crew. Our technology is just an artifact to them. Engineer Frank Murphy shook his head in disbelief. How can they not recognize us as intelligent? We built interstellar ships, for heaven's sake. I think they communicate differently, Alice said. Notice how they never respond to our broadcasts? Maybe they don't use sound at all. Frank's eyes widened. Telepathy? You think they're telepathic? It would explain why they see us as animals, Alice replied. If they've evolved to communicate mind to mind, maybe they can't detect our thoughts. To them, we're just making noise. On the alien vessel, Vrax entered a vast chamber where representatives from 23 species of the Galactic Concord had gathered. All were telepathic beings, though they varied widely in physical form. The Earth creatures are fascinating anomalies, Vrax communicated to the assembly. They have constructed impressive technology despite being non-sentient. Their brain structure suggests they may be approaching the evolutionary threshold where true consciousness emerges. The High Observer of the Concord, an ancient being with crystalline features, responded with skepticism. Technology without sentience? Impossible. The artifacts must have been created by another species. All evidence suggests the technology is theirs, Vrax insisted. We've never encountered anything like them. I request permission for extensive study. As the aliens debated, Dr. Peter Grant made a crucial discovery. While examining the walls of his enclosure, he noticed they vibrated, slightly when he spoke loudly. By tapping different patterns, he could create temperature changes in the habitat. In the next enclosure, another human captive noticed what he was doing. Soon, they established a primitive communication system, tapping out simple codes to each other. Maybe we can't speak to the aliens directly, Peter thought, but we can still communicate with each other. On the frontier, Alice and Frank huddled over a hastily assembled device. If they're telepathic, Frank explained, this might amplify our brainwaves. It's crude, but it could help them detect our thoughts. Alice nodded grimly. We have to try something. They're dismantling our ship piece by piece. As darkness fell in the artificial habitats, Peter lay awake, planning. Tomorrow he would attempt to demonstrate human intelligence through mathematics and pattern recognition. If sound couldn't bridge the gap between species, perhaps logic and reason could. The fate of humanity now depended on proving they were more than clever animals. They needed to show that intelligence could evolve beyond telepathy, that spoken language was not the random noise of beasts, but the voice of a sentient species reaching out across the stars. Morning arrived in the alien habitat as lights slowly brightened to simulate dawn. Dr. Peter Grant sat up from his sleeping area and looked around at what the aliens had provided, a space designed to approximate an Earth environment, complete, with synthetic plants and a small pond of water. It was a comfortable cage, but a cage nonetheless. In neighboring enclosures, he could see other humans from the frontier. Catherine Lee, a botanist, paced in her habitat while Security Officer Ryan Parker examined every inch of his enclosure, looking for weaknesses. Peter walked to the transparent wall separating him from Ryan and tapped a pattern they had developed yesterday, a simple code based on Earth's Morse system. Ryan stopped his inspection and moved closer. Found anything useful? Peter tapped. Ryan shook his head and tapped back. Nothing. Wall's too strong. Their conversation was interrupted when 3 aliens approached. Peter recognized one as the being he thought of as his handler, the iridescent creature that brought food and adjusted his habitat. The aliens stood watching him, their large eyes flickering with internal light patterns. Peter had begun to notice that different patterns seemed to correspond to different emotional states or types of communication. Right now, they were excited about something. A section of wall slid open, and Peter's handler gestured for him to exit. With no real choice, Peter stepped out and was guided through a series of curved corridors. Two other humans were brought along the same route. Catherine and Ryan joined him as they were led into a large circular room. The room contained various objects arranged on tables, simple puzzles, building blocks, colored shapes, and what appeared to be alien technology. Several Zolarians stood around the perimeter, their eyes flickering rapidly as they communicated silently. "They're testing us," Catherine whispered. "Like scientists testing animal intelligence." Ryan nodded grimly. "Lab rats in a maze." Peter studied the items carefully. "This is our chance. We need to show them we're intelligent in ways they'll understand." He approached a table containing geometric shapes and began arranging them deliberately. First, he created a simple sequence: triangle, square, pentagon, hexagon, showing an understanding of increasing sides. Then he carefully built a model of the solar system, with differently sized spheres representing planets in their correct order from the sun. Catherine caught on quickly. At another table, she began sorting colored objects not by their color, which might seem instinctive, but by mathematical principles, creating a visualization of the Fibonacci sequence. Ryan watched them both, then turned to a puzzle clearly designed to test problem solving. It involved getting a small object through a maze using tools provided. Instead of solving it directly, Ryan disassembled the entire apparatus and rebuilt it more efficiently, demonstrating engineering intelligence. The Zolarians observed with increasing agitation, their eye patterns flashing rapidly. Meanwhile, aboard what remained of the Frontier, Commander Alice Nelson led a small team through the damaged sections of the ship. Parts of the hull had been removed by alien technology, exposing inner corridors to temporary force fields that shimmered with blue energy. "The aliens are taking us apart piece by piece," Engineer Frank Murphy said as they reached his workshop. "Another day of this and the ship won't be salvageable." Alice nodded grimly. "Then we'd better make your idea work today. How's the device coming?" Frank unveiled a helmet-like apparatus connected to a portable power unit. "It's ready for testing. In theory, it should amplify human brainwaves and convert them into patterns similar to their telepathic signals." "In theory," Alice repeated. "And if it doesn't work?" Frank's expression was grim. "Then we'll never convince them we're intelligent life forms." Back in the testing room, Peter had moved to a screen showing shifting patterns of light. Clearly, an alien form of writing or communication. He studied it intensely, looking for repeating elements or structure. "There's a pattern here," he told Catherine quietly. "I think their language is based on light frequencies rather than sound." A new Zolarian entered the room, larger than the others with skin that shimmered with deeper colors. The other aliens immediately showed deference, their eye patterns changing to what Peter was beginning to recognize as respect or submission. "That must be someone important," Ryan whispered. "Maybe a scientist or leader." The new alien approached Peter directly, studying him with unnerving intensity. It held out an object, a small cube that projected holographic images when touched. Peter carefully took the cube. When his fingers made contact, it displayed an image of the Frontier, then zoomed in to show humans operating the ship's controls. "They want to know how we use technology," Peter realized. He touched the cube again and it responded to his manipulation, displaying different images. With deliberate care, Peter used the cube to create a simple sequence of images. Humans speaking to each other, sound waves traveling between them, then the sound waves entering ears and connecting to brain images. He was trying to explain vocal communication. The lead alien's eyes flashed with new patterns. It took the cube back and added to Peter's sequence images of Zolarian brains connecting directly to each other with no sound waves involved. "They're telepathic, just as we suspected," Peter whispered excitedly. "And they're trying to communicate." In a different section of the alien vessel, a strange habitat contained creatures that looked nothing like humans. They had bark-like skin and fur, limbs and communicated through clicking sounds made by rubbing appendages together. When a Zilarian approached their enclosure, they retreated to the far corner. One of these creatures, watching through the transparent wall, observed the humans being tested. Unlike its companions, it moved closer to the boundary of its habitat, clicking quietly to itself. On the frontier, Alice strapped the thought amplifier device to her head while Frank made final adjustments. "If this works, we'll broadcast directly into their telepathic network," he explained. "But we've got to get closer to their main ship." Alice winced as the device powered up, sending uncomfortable tingles across her scalp. "How close?" "Inside. It ideally," Frank admitted. "The signal won't penetrate their hull from here." "So we need to get captured," Alice said. "Deliberately." Frank nodded reluctantly. "It's our best chance." In the testing chamber, Peter was making progress. The lead, Zilarian, had brought more objects, including a crude drawing implement. Peter immediately began sketching human figures, the frontier Earth, and simple mathematical equations. As he drew, he noticed something odd. Whenever he spoke while drawing, the lead alien's eyes flickered in specific patterns that matched the rhythm of his speech. It was noticing the connection between his voice and his actions. Peter drew a human mouth with sound waves coming out, then pointed to his own mouth and spoke clearly. Communication. For the first time, the alien seemed to focus on the sounds he made, rather than dismissing them as animal noise. Catherine and Ryan moved closer, watching intently as Peter tried again, speaking and drawing simultaneously. Humans speak with sound. The lead Zilarian's eye patterns changed dramatically. It turned to the others, and a flurry of silent communication ensued. The atmosphere in the room shifted palpably. "I think we're getting through to them," Catherine whispered hopefully. Outside the testing chamber, unnoticed by all, a small monitoring device captured everything and transmitted it to a distant part of the ship, where the clicking creatures watched with growing interest. As night fell again in the habitats, Peter lay awake, his mind racing. They had made progress today, but would it be enough? The Zilarians seemed intrigued, but not convinced. Tomorrow would be crucial. Unknown to him, Commander Alice and her team were preparing to surrender themselves to the aliens, carrying Frank's thought amplifier hidden among their equipment. And in the shadows of the alien vessel, other captive species were beginning to take notice of the strange new creatures who made sounds with purpose. The next day would determine whether humans would remain fascinating animals in an alien zoo or be recognized as the intelligent species they were. The grand observation chamber of the Zilarian vessel hummed with activity as dozens of aliens gathered. Their eye patterns flashed rapidly in silent conversation, while they arranged themselves in tiered seating around a central platform. Today was an important event, the formal presentation of the Earth specimens to the Galactic Concord representatives. In a preparation room adjacent to the chamber, Peter, Catherine, and Ryan waited nervously. Their handler aliens had dressed them in simple white garments and attached small devices to their temples. Monitoring equipment, Peter assumed. "This feels like we're about to be put on display," Catherine whispered. Ryan nodded grimly. "We are. Like prize animals at a show." Peter paced the small room. "This is actually good. If important aliens are coming to see us, we'll have a chance to demonstrate our intelligence to more of them. Maybe someone will understand what we're trying to communicate." The door slid open, and their handlers gestured for them to follow. As they entered the main chamber, Peter felt a wave of anxiety. Hundreds of alien eyes turned to watch them, not just Zilarians but beings of various shapes and sizes, all observing with the same silent, telepathic communication. In the center of the platform stood the lead Zilarian from yesterday's testing session. Peter had begun thinking of it as the Professor, based on its apparent role. The Professor's skin shimmered with vibrant colors as it gestured for the humans to approach. On a nearby table lay various objects, the testing materials from the previous day along with new items. Peter recognized mathematical tools, drawing, implements, and several devices he couldn't identify. Elsewhere on the Zilarian vessel, Commander Alice Nelson and 3 volunteer crew members had just been captured. They had positioned themselves near a section of the frontier that the aliens were dismantling, making no effort to hide. As expected, they were transported aboard the alien ship within minutes. Alice felt the thought amplifier device hidden beneath her uniform. Frank had disguised it as medical equipment, hoping the aliens wouldn't recognize its true purpose. The plan was simple but dangerous. Find where the other humans were being held, activate the device, and broadcast human thoughts directly into the alien telepathic network. Stay calm and follow my lead, Alice whispered to her team as alien handlers approached them. Back in the observation chamber, the professor had begun its presentation. Using the holographic cube, it displayed images of Earth, the frontier, and various human activities. The assembled aliens watched with interest, their eye patterns suggesting curiosity and scientific detachment. Peter understood that this was his chance. When the professor handed him a drawing implement, he immediately began creating a complex mathematical proof on the provided surface. He worked quickly but precisely, solving an equation that demonstrated understanding of advanced calculus. Catherine and Ryan joined in. Catherine created a model of DNA using provided materials, while Ryan assembled a miniature version of an engine, showing understanding of mechanical principles. The alien audience reacted with increasing agitation. Their eye patterns shifted rapidly as they communicated their observations to each other. One alien rose from the audience, a tall being with crystalline features that caught the light differently than the others. This was the High Observer of the Galactic Concord, the most important visitor. It approached the platform and examined the humans' work with obvious intensity. The High Observer communicated something to the professor, causing a ripple of reaction through the audience. The professor's color patterns dimmed slightly, a sign of disagreement or uncertainty, Peter had learned. The High Observer picked up Peter's mathematical proof and added to it, challenging him with a more complex problem. Peter hesitated, then confidently solved it, extending the proof further. For a moment, something like tension filled the room. Then the High Observer dismissed the interaction with a flickering eye pattern that somehow conveyed skepticism. It communicated to the audience, and Peter could sense the dismissal in its demeanor. "They still don't believe we're intelligent," Peter whispered to Catherine. "They think we're just mimicking or performing tricks." At that moment, the door to the chamber opened again. Alice and her team were brought in, guided by handler aliens who seemed excited by the new specimens. Alice quickly scanned the room and locked eyes with Peter, giving him a nearly imperceptible nod. The professor's colors brightened at this new development. It gestured for Alice to join the others on the platform. As Alice approached, Peter noticed something bulging beneath her uniform. Understanding flashed between them. She had brought a device of some kind. The professor began a new series of tests, apparently wanting to demonstrate how these new specimens would react to the same challenges. Alice pretended confusion at first, deliberately underperforming to lower the aliens' expectations. In another part of the ship, something unexpected was happening. The click-speaking creatures from the neighboring habitat had managed to open a maintenance panel. One of them slipped through the opening and began navigating the service tunnels of the vessel, moving with surprising purpose and intelligence. Back in the observation chamber, Alice had positioned herself near the center of the platform. As the professor turned to address the audience, she gave a signal to her team. In unison, they reached beneath their uniforms and activated hidden devices. Frank's thought amplifier hummed to life, sending a surge of energy through Alice's body. She gasped in pain but remained standing, focusing her thoughts as he had instructed her. The effect was immediate and dramatic. Every alien in the room froze, their eye patterns suddenly erratic. The professor staggered backward, clearly overwhelmed by unexpected input. "It's working," Peter exclaimed. "They can hear our thoughts." The amplifier wasn't perfect. It broadcast raw, unfiltered human consciousness rather than clear communication. But for the first time, the aliens were experiencing human thought directly. The High Observer recovered first, its crystalline features gleaming as it approached Alice. Instead of showing anger, it seemed intensely curious. It reached out and touched the device beneath her uniform, not attempting to remove it but examining it with newfound respect. In the confusion, no one noticed the small door at the back of the chamber sliding open. The click-speaking creature had arrived, accompanied by several of its kind. They observed the scene with obvious intelligence, clicking rapidly to each other in what was clearly a language. Alice focused her thoughts on simple concepts. Humans are intelligent. We speak with sound. We think with words. The High Observer's eye pattern shifted to a configuration Peter hadn't seen before. It turned to the audience and communicated something that caused a wave of response, surprise, disbelief, and uncertainty, rippled through the gathered aliens. The professor approached Alice cautiously, its colors now pulsing in rhythm with her broadcast thoughts. A connection was forming. Peter stepped forward, speaking aloud while Alice broadcast the same concepts telepathically. We are not animals. We are people. We build ships that travel between stars. We create art and music and mathematics. For Yao, the first time, the aliens seemed to connect the spoken words with the thoughts they were receiving. The professor's eyes flickered in patterns that matched Peter's speech rhythm perfectly. The High Observer made a decision. It gestured, and attendants brought forward a device unlike anything the humans had seen, a glowing sphere that hovered in the air between them. I think they want to communicate properly, Catherine whispered, watching in awe. As the sphere activated, images formed in the air around them, not just visual pictures, but concepts and emotions made somehow tangible. The first true conversation between humans and the Galactic Conquered was about to begin. In the shadows, the click-speaking creatures watched and waited, ready to reveal that humans were not the only voice-using intelligence that had been misunderstood. The glowing sphere hovering between the humans and aliens pulsed with soft light. As Alice concentrated on the thought amplifier, the sphere responded, creating translucent images in the air that shifted and changed. It was translating human thoughts into visual concepts the aliens could understand. Peter watched in amazement as his spoken words appeared as light patterns matching those in the aliens' eyes. For the first time, the barriers between species were breaking down. We come from a planet called Earth, Peter said clearly, watching the sphere translate his speech into light patterns. We evolved using sound to communicate because our species cannot naturally send thoughts directly to each other. The professor's colors rippled with excitement as it responded. The sphere translated its telepathic message into human words that echoed softly in the chamber. How can intelligence exist without the mind path? All sentient beings share thoughts directly. Alice stepped forward, the amplifier still humming beneath her uniform. Different evolutionary paths can lead to intelligence. Our brains developed language instead of telepathy. The High Observer approached, its crystalline features catching the light as it studied the humans closely. Through the sphere, its thoughts became words. For countless cycles, we have classified species by their telepathic abilities. Those without the mind path were considered animals, regardless of their accomplishments. A murmur of communication rippled through the alien audience, their eye patterns flashing rapidly. Catherine joined the conversation. There may be many different types of intelligence in the galaxy. Judging all species by one standard misses the diversity of life. As they spoke, Ryan noticed movement at the back of the chamber. The click-speaking creatures had entered fully now, moving with deliberate purpose toward the platform. One of them, larger than the others with distinctive markings on its bark-like skin, stepped forward. The aliens reacted with surprise. Through the sphere, the humans heard, "The Krell specimens have escaped containment." The lead Krell raised its upper limbs and produced a complex series of clicks and vibrations. To everyone's shock, the translation sphere responded, converting the sounds to both telepathic patterns and spoken words. "We have been trying to communicate with you for 700 years. The chamber erupted in chaos as the aliens struggled to process this revelation. Not one but two supposedly non-sentient species were demonstrating intelligence. The High Observer's colors darkened with what seemed like shock or dismay. It communicated rapidly with the professor and other important aliens. Peter turned to the Krell leader. "You understand us? You've been watching?" The Krell clicked rapidly, the sphere translating. We recognized your attempt to prove intelligence. Like us, you use sound for communication. We have observed the Zellarians for generations, learning their technology while they studied us as animals. Alice's thought amplifier began to falter, its power source depleting. Engineer Frank stepped forward, supporting her as she struggled to maintain the connection. The device is failing, Frank whispered. We need to establish communication without it before it dies completely. The professor noticed their distress and approached. Its colors shifted to what Peter now recognized as concern. Through the sphere, it asked, "Your communication device causes pain?" Alice nodded weakly. It was built quickly with limited resources. It forces our thoughts into patterns your minds can detect, but it wasn't designed for extended use. The professor conferred with other Zellarians, then approached with a small device in its slender hands. It carefully removed Alice's makeshift amplifier and replaced it with the new device, attaching it gently to her temple. Relief washed over Alice's face. "It doesn't hurt anymore," she said in surprise. "And I can sense you somehow." The professor's colors brightened. A proper translation interface crude by our standards but better adapted to your physiology. On the other side of the chamber, the High Observer was examining the Krell with new understanding. The translation sphere captured their exchange. "How did we miss the signs of your intelligence for 7 centuries?" The Krell leader clicked. Rapidly, "You looked only for thoughts that resembled your own. Our clicking speech was dismissed as random noise just as human vocalizations were. We learned to hide our true nature while studying you." The professor turned to address the entire chamber, its color patterns bright and emphatic. The sphere translated, "We have made a terrible mistake. Our definition of sentience has been too narrow. These species communicate differently, but they are unquestionably intelligent." A new alien stepped forward from the audience, one with flowing, liquid-like features that shimmered in the light. The sphere identified it as the Oceanic Elder, representative of another Concord species. If these findings are correct, the Oceanic Elder's thoughts flowed through the sphere. "We must reconsider the status of dozens of species currently classified as non-sentient. This changes everything." The High Observer's crystalline form seemed to dim slightly, a sign of deep reflection or possibly distress. "The implications are enormous. If we have wrongly classified these species as animals, we have committed a grave injustice against countless beings." Back on the frontier, the remaining crew had noticed the aliens had stopped dismantling their ship. Communications Officer Diane Miller monitored the sudden change in alien activity from the bridge. "Something's happened," she told the crew. "They're withdrawing their equipment. Maybe the commander succeeded?" In the chamber, Peter worked with the professor to improve communication while Catherine spoke with the Krell, learning about their society and history. Ryan and Frank examined the Zellarian technology with newfound permission, amazed by its sophistication. Alice addressed the High Observer directly. "We request the return of our people and our ship. We came in peace to establish a colony, not to intrude on territories claimed by the conquered." The High Observer conferred with other important aliens before responding. "Your people will be returned unharmed. Your vessel will be repaired to compensate for our misunderstanding." Then it added something unexpected. "We wish to establish formal relations with humanity. Your different form of intelligence offers new perspectives the Concord has never considered." As news spread throughout the Zellarian vessel, other alien species held in habitats began to stir. Some had been classified as non-sentient for thousands of years, despite having complex vocalizations or other non-telepathic forms of communication. The professor approached Peter with a new holographic device. "We have much to learn from each other," it communicated. "With your permission, I would like to study human language properly." Peter smiled. "And I would like to learn about telepathic communication. Perhaps humans have untapped potential in that area." As evening approached, the humans gathered in comfortable quarters, no longer specimens in habitats but guests of the Galactic Concord. Alice contacted the frontier with news of their breakthrough. "We've done it," she told Diane over the communication link. "They understand we're intelligent now. We've been invited to join a galactic community we never knew existed." The Krell leader joined them, its clicking speech now easily translated by the Zalarian devices. "This is just the beginning," it told the humans. "Together, we will help." The Conquered recognize other misunderstood species. Peter stared out a viewport at the stars beyond, thinking about how much had changed in just a few days. Humanity had not only made first contact, but had fundamentally changed how an entire galactic civilization viewed intelligence itself. Tomorrow, they would begin formal negotiations with the Conquered. The future had suddenly become much larger and more complex than anyone on Earth had imagined. 1 month later, the repaired U.S. Frontier orbited a beautiful blue-green planet in the Alpha Centauri system. The ship now shared space with several Zalarian vessels, their sleek forms glittering in the light of the nearby star. On the surface, below, construction had begun on humanity's first interstellar colony, but with a significant change from the original plans. In a large meeting room aboard the primary Zalarian ship, Commander Alice Nelson sat at a round table with representatives from 27 different species. Some she recognized from the initial contact, like the Professor and the High Observer. Others were new faces, or in some cases not faces at all, but various sensory organs that serve different evolutionary paths. "The human colony will serve as the first mixed communication outpost," Alice explained to the assembly. "A place where telepathic and vocal species can learn from each other." The Professor, now officially named Cultural Exchange Director Vrax, responded through its much-improved translation device. "This marks a historic shift for the Galactic Concord. For millennia, we assumed telepathy was the only path to advanced intelligence. Your arrival has changed everything." The High Observer's crystalline form caught the light as it added, "We have already identified 14 additional species, previously classified as non-sentient, that show clear signs of vocal or symbolic language. Reclassification teams are working throughout Conquered space." Peter, now serving as chief linguist for the human delegation, reviewed data on his tablet. "The linguistic survey we conducted with the Krell has been incredibly valuable. Their experience hiding their intelligence from telepathic observation gives us insight into how other misclassified species might behave." The Krell leader, whose name translated roughly as Song of Morning Light, clicked its agreement. "Many species developed behaviors to appear less intelligent as a survival mechanism. When your captors believe you are mere animals, they become careless with their technology and information." In another section of the ship, Catherine worked with a diverse team of xenobiologists studying the biological basis for different communication methods. Her laboratory contained tissue samples from dozens of species, each with unique adaptations for communication. "Human vocal cords evolved from very simple structures," she explained to her alien colleagues. Similarly, the Krell developed sound-producing mechanisms from what were originally defensive features. Evolution finds many paths to the same destination. The oceanic elder, floating in a specialized container filled with its native liquid environment, communicated through the translator. "We have discovered that many telepathic species actually have dormant vocal structures. Conversely, your human brains contain neural patterns that might be developed for limited telepathic ability, with proper training." In the engineering section, Frank worked alongside Zalarian technicians to integrate human technology with alien systems. His improved thought amplifier design had become the basis for a new generation of translation devices. The key breakthrough was understanding that human brains already produce patterns similar to telepathic emissions, Frank explained to Ryan as they calibrated equipment. "They're just too weak for natural detection. We're not so different after all, just tuned to different frequencies." Ryan nodded, watching the Zalarian engineers communicate silently as they worked. "Still feels strange seeing them talk without making a sound. I wonder if we seem equally weird to them, making mouth noises all the time." On the bridge of the frontier, Diane coordinated communications with Earth. The news of first contact had been transmitted back to humanity's homeworld 3 weeks ago, and the first responses were beginning to arrive. Earth is sending a diplomatic delegation, Diane told Alice when she returned from the meeting. They'll arrive in about 6 years with the newly completed UESS Harmony. Until then, we represent all of humanity. Alice sighed, feeling the weight of that responsibility. 6 years is a long time to be humanity's only representatives. At least we have the colonists. The cryosleep chambers containing 10,000 human colonists remained undisturbed. The leadership had decided to wake them gradually in small groups, to better manage their introduction to a universe far more complex than anyone had imagined when they left Earth. Later that evening, Peter and the Professor Vrax stood on an observation deck overlooking the planet below. Construction lights from the colony site twinkled on the surface. "We've prepared a curriculum to help new colonists understand the conquered species," Peter said. "But I'm worried about culture shock. They signed up to build a human colony on a new world, not to be the front line of an interspecies cultural exchange." Vrax's colors shifted to warm, reassuring tones. "Change is difficult for all species, but adaptation is what made both our peoples successful. I believe your colonists will adjust, just as the Concord is adjusting." Peter nodded. "I hope so. It's strange to think that if we hadn't met, if we'd established our colony without encountering the Concord, we might have developed for centuries without knowing about all this." He gestured to the stars beyond the viewport. "And we would have continued classifying vocal species as animals," Vrax replied, a hint of shame coloring its communication. "Sometimes progress requires a collision of different perspectives." The next morning, a ceremony took place in the newly constructed central plaza of the colony. Humans stood side by side with Zilarians, Krell, and representatives from other conquered species. A monument was unveiled, a sculpture showing a human hand and a Zilarian hand reaching toward each other across a divide. Alice addressed the gathered beings, her words translated instantly through the new devices everyone wore. "Today we name our colony. Though we came as frontier colonists, we now stand at a different kind of frontier, the boundary between different forms of intelligence. Therefore, we name this settlement Concordia, in honor of the new understanding between our peoples." The High Observer stepped forward, its crystalline form gleaming in the sunlight of Alpha Centauri. "The Galactic Concord formally recognizes humanity as a fully sentient species with all rights and protections that entails. Furthermore, we establish the Concordia Protocols, new guidelines for recognizing and respecting intelligence in all its forms." As cheers and telepathic celebrations filled the air, a small group of newly awakened colonists watched from the sidelines, still adjusting to their new reality. Among them, a young engineer named Lisa Graham turned to her colleague, wide-eyed. "When we left Earth, we thought we were going to build farms and factories on a new world," she whispered. Nobody said anything about aliens. Her friend John Bennett smiled, watching the diverse beings mingling in the plaza. "We're building something much more important now, a bridge between different kinds of minds." In orbit above, the Frontier's communication array transmitted images of the ceremony back toward Earth, a message that would take years to arrive. But the lessons learned at Alpha Centauri would eventually transform humanity's understanding of life, intelligence, and their place in a universe far more complex and diverse than anyone had imagined. As the sun set on the first official day of Concordia's existence, Alice looked up at the stars appearing in the darkening sky. Somewhere out there, other vocal species waited to be discovered and recognized. The galaxy would never be the same again, all because humans had found their voice in a universe that had never thought to listen for one.